Number 1. Jezebel. Jezebel is mentioned in Revelation chapter 2, verses 20 through 23, in a letter addressed to the church in Thyatira, one of the 7 churches to which the book of Revelation is written. In this passage, Jesus, in a vision by John, speaks to the church, addressing both their commendable qualities and their shortcomings. The mention of Jezebel is significant because it draws a parallel between a figure in the Old Testament and a potential issue within the church. The church in Thyatira is praised for its love, faith, service, and patience. It is condemned as well, though, for tolerating a person called Jezebel. This Jezebel is depicted as a prophetess who encourages the immoral behavior of Christ's servants, including consuming food offered to idols and engaging in sexual misconduct. Even if we are unsure of who Jezebel is in Revelation chapter 2, verse 20, we know her namesake in Hebrew literature. The Jezebel of the Old Testament was the wife of Ahab, the king of Israel. She was a wicked, idolatrous, and vulgar queen whose name is now associated with an amoral, shameless individual. Her marriage to Ahab contributed to the establishment of stronger commercial links between Israel and the Phoenician port city of Sidon. Jezebel was one of the daughters of Ethbaal, the Sidonian king. She corrupted her husband, the king, and all of Israel through her devotion to the pagan god Baal. She persuaded people to adhere to her evil by using her position of authority. Elijah foretold Jezebel's brutal demise, telling King Ahab that his wicked wife would be devoured by dogs. Jesus Christ chastises the church of Thyatira in Revelation chapter 2 by saying, "You allowed that woman Jezebel, who calls herself a prophetess, to teach and seduce my servants to commit sexual immorality and eat things sacrificed to idols." Revelation chapter 2, verse 20. If the Jezebel of the New Testament was a genuine person, her name was probably not Jezebel. She is characterized by Christ as being persuasive within the church and using her self-appointment to influence church members to sin. This was akin to the Jezebel of the Old Testament, who led the Israelites to become corrupted within. Thyatira was a heavily developed commercial trading hub. It is therefore likely that the Jezebel of Revelation chapter 2 verse 20 was wealthy, powerful, and had considerable influence over the local economy. Take note of the following from Haley's Bible Handbook regarding this historic city and this Jezebel. Thyatira was a center of commerce, and the records preserve references to more trade guilds than those listed for any other Asian city. Necessity for guild membership in a trading community must have strengthened the temptation to compromise. Thus, it is appropriate to find a woman named after Jezebel, the princess who, by marrying Ahab, sealed his trading partnership with the Phoenicians, leading a party of compromise in the Thyatira church. In essence, this woman was instructing the church members to be friends of the world. Jesus Christ compared friendship with the world to spiritual adultery. The Apostle James is very direct about this. "Adulterers and adulteresses," he says, "do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Whoever therefore wants to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God." James chapter 4, verse 4. Moreover, Christ says of Jezebel, "I gave her time to repent of her sexual immorality, and she did not repent." Revelation chapter 2, verse 21. This is similar to the impudent Jezebel of ancient times, who resisted God after her horrifying demise. The Jezebel of Revelation chapter 2, verse 20 might not be an actual person, but she stands in for the spiritual idolatry that Thyatira-influenced church members practice. In any event, the message of Christ is that she is not to be accepted. He tells the church, "I will kill her children with death." Like the Jezebel of the Old Testament, this Jezebel meets a horrible end, teaching all of us a lesson to resist her seductive influence in the church. Number 2. The woman clothed with the sun. Revelation chapter 12, verses 1 through 6. A great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns on its heads. Its tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to the earth. The dragon stood in front of the woman who was about to give birth, so that it might devour her child the moment he was born. She gave birth to a son, a male child, who will rule all the nations with an iron scepter, and her child was snatched up to God and his throne. The woman fled into the wilderness to a place prepared for her by God, where she might be taken care of for 1260 days. This woman of the Apocalypse stands in for Old Testament Israel, whom God likened to a woman that he had adorned in majesty and respect. The 12 stars on the garland could stand for the 12 tribes of Israel. The woman is continually shielded by God throughout Revelation chapter 12, especially as the time draws near for the establishment of the kingdom of our God on earth. In the New Testament, God's church is described as a woman, and its members are compared to virgins. The church is also referred to as the Israel of God, and compared to Jerusalem above, which is referred to as the mother of us all. See Galatians chapter 4 verse 26, Hebrews chapter 12 verses 22 and 23. People who belong to the church are referred to as a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his or God's own special people. 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 9. Christ will marry the church, referred to as his wife in Revelation chapter 19 verse 7, when he comes to earth again. These verses make it quite obvious that the woman in Revelation chapter 12 is a symbol of God's people. Israel, God's chosen nation, is pictured as giving birth to a male child who will rule over all peoples with an iron rod. Jesus Christ was born in Israel. The next line of the passage reads, "And her child was caught up to God and his throne." Jesus is the one who is predicted to overthrow the nations, and he will himself rule over them with an iron fist. He is also the one who, following his resurrection, was carried up into heaven in a cloud. Acts chapter 1 verses 9 through 11. Jesus is unmistakably the child in Revelation chapter 12. The third image in Revelation chapter 12 is a large, fiery red dragon that is standing in front of a woman who is about to give birth to devour her unborn child. This dragon is eventually recognized as Satan. So the great dragon was cast out, that serpent of old, called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. We know that the dragon is Satan because he is the one who, in his quest to elevate his throne above the stars of God and be like the Most High, was in charge of a third of the angels who rebelled against God. Therefore, he is the one said to have drawn a third of the stars of heaven. Contextually, stars represent angels. If God has ministers of righteousness, Satan also has his servants, physical ministers who are themselves deceived and aid in the deception of others, as well as spirit beings who pose as virtuous while encouraging people to sin. Jude goes on to say that the fallen angels or devils are angels who disobeyed their appropriate authority and are now kept in eternal chains waiting for the judgment of the great day. Revelation chapter 12 verses 3 through 17 provides a succinct story of Satan's attempts to hinder God's plan to bring many people to glory as members of his eternal family. In his endeavor to become like God, Satan persecuted God's followers and persuaded 1/3 of the angels to join him. He also tried to have Christ assassinated as a child and worked to deceive the entire world. Number 3. The Whore of Babylon. Revelation chapter 17 verses 1 through 6. One of the 7 angels who had the 7 bulls came and said to me, "Come, I will show you the punishment of the great prostitute, who sits by many waters. With her, the kings of the earth commit adultery, and the inhabitants of the earth were intoxicated with the wine of her adulteries." Then the angel carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness. There I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered with blasphemous names and had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet, and was glittering with gold, precious stones, and pearls. She held a golden cup in her hand, filled with abominable things and the filth of her adulteries. The name written on her forehead was a mystery: Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth. I saw that the woman was drunken with the blood of God's holy people, the blood of those who bore testimony to Jesus. The Whore of Babylon is a representation of the spiritual depravity and apostasy. She is said to be seated atop a creature named in obscene ways, signifying her allegiance to evil forces. Her deeds of enticing the kings of the earth symbolize the allure of material wealth and the renunciation of one's faith in favor of temporal prosperity. The woman is described as wearing lavish clothing and clutching a golden cup that is loaded with filth and repulsive objects, which alludes to the alluring attraction of worldly pleasures and materialism. This serves as a warning against the allure of a godless and hedonistic society. She has the name Babylon the Great emblazoned over her forehead. In the Old Testament, the city of Babylon was infamous for its hostility toward God and its treatment of God's people. Here, it stands for a more extensive system of disobedience to God and persecution of Christians. The statement that she is drunk with the blood of God's holy people implies that she played a part in the persecution of Christians who testify to Jesus. This emphasizes the animosity and antagonism faced by believers in a society where false beliefs are prevalent. Eschatologically speaking, the Whore of Babylon is frequently viewed as the pinnacle of spiritual depravity and evil that will be judged and destroyed by God in the last days. Her downfall is an element of Revelation's larger apocalyptic story. Overall, the Whore of Babylon serves as a striking representation of spiritual waywardness, worldly allurement, and the results of rejecting God. In the context of Revelation, her portrayal places a strong emphasis on the necessity of remaining faithful to God and rejecting the defiling influences of a fallen world. She is a power that will finally be condemned and destroyed as part of God's divine plan for the restoration of justice and righteousness.